We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara and Meseches Kamma. This is Kamma Daf 78b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was trying to find a case where we apply the rule of Rava. The rule of Rava, again, is that anytime the Torah says the word "seh," it comes to exclude kilayim. And the Gemara said that we apply that rule to a case where you have an animal that's born from a kosher mother animal and a non-kosher father animal. And in such a situation, we say that that offspring is not kosher. And that's where we apply the rule of Rava. And the Gemara also noted that this doesn't follow Rabbi Yoshua, even though Rabbi Yoshua agrees with this halacha, but he actually learns it from a different pasuk. He learns it from the pasuk of seh kesavim v'seh izim. And in any case, the Gemara asks, is it even possible to have an offspring in this manner? Can you have a mother that's a kosher animal and a father that's a non-kosher animal, and you can have such an offspring? Is that even possible? And the Gemara says, yes, it is possible. The Yabra Mikolit, a case could be where the mother animal became impregnated from a kolut. A kolut means an animal with non-cloven hooves, meaning not split hooves. It does not have the signs of kashrus, Rabbi Shimon, and that follows Rabbi Shimon, and Rashi here explains. The Yabra Mikolit, Rabbi Shimon, the mother animal is impregnated from a kolut, like Rabbi Shimon says. Kolut parsos of kolutas. A kolut is an animal that does not have split hooves. V'nolad min hatar. And the case over here is that animal, without the split hooves, this animal that's a kolut, is actually born from kosher animals. Rabbi Shimon kari le tamei. Rabbi Shimon calls this animal tamei, calls this animal a non-kosher animal. Even though the animal is born from a kosher mother and a father, this kolut is born from a kosher mother and father animal, still the animal itself that's kolut is called a non-kosher animal, and then that animal goes ahead and impregnates a mother animal that's kosher. The Tanya beBechoros, as we learned in the Brais and Bechoros, Rabbi Shimon says, Gomel, Shnei Pamim. It says the word Gomel, camel, 2 times in the pasuk, and we understand from that, Echad Gomel Hanolin min Hagamla. It doesn't matter if the camel is born from a mother camel, that's obviously not kosher. V'Echad Gomel Hanolin min Hapara, but even if the camel is born from a kosher animal, from a para, from a cow, and again, a Gomel does not have split hooves, still it is going to be considered not kosher. V'Afilu Evraso min Hatar, and even if this para, it became pregnant from another kosher animal, Mishor Gomer, from a regular shore, from a regular ox, Ka'asr le Rabbi Shimon. Still, Rabbi Shimon says that such a gomel is considered to be prohibited. In other words, Rabbi Shimon refers to this kolut, even though it's born from kosher animals, he holds that's called a non-kosher animal. Upolagol Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua actually disagrees with Rabbi Shimon on this point. Heichod evraso min hatar. If it is born, if the mother rather is impregnated from a kosher animal, Mishor she'eno kolut, meaning again from an ox that does have split hooves, umatiro b'simen echot shel tahara. And Rabbi Yoshua would say that if you have such an animal that comes from a kosher mother animal and a kosher father animal, as long as it has one siman of tahara, it's kosher according to Rabbi Yoshua. O male gera, o mafres parsa. Either it chews its cud, or it has a split hoof, that would be good, or it has split hoofs, that would be good enough. V'doresh es zelo tochlu es hagomel. And the way Rabbi Yoshua darshans, as he says again, the pasuk says you can't eat the camel. Ze iyata ochel b'siman echad. In this case, one kosher sign is not enough. But there is another animal where one sign is enough. What case is that? Tamei hanoled min hatar. If you have a non-kosher animal that's born from a kosher mother animal, v'iburo min hatar, and that mother animal was impregnated from a kosher father animal, that would be a situation where it is okay with one siman. And then Rabbi Yoshua continues, Yachol af ivuro min hatame. I might think that's even true if the mother animal became pregnant from a non-kosher animal. Kilomar yachol kashem shani machsher bo, meaning to say, just like we say that this animal is kosher, kachani machsher b'vno. So maybe let's say this animal has an offspring. Would I say that this animal's offspring is kosher? Im nisabra para heimenu. Let's say this animal impregnates a para. Talmud lomar seh kesavim v'seh izim. That's what the pasuk says. Seh kesavim v'seh izim ad shehei nolad mishnei kevasim. That it has to be that it's born from 2 sheep, meaning to say sheyihu aviv v'imo kevasim. Both the father and the mother have to be sheep. V'ahi psula divino. Now this disqualification of this offspring, the nafka leilu Rabbi Yoshua mikavasim, which Rabbi Yoshua is learning from the word kavasim, mashma leilu Rava miseh. That's what we're going to use Rava's rule for from the word seh, meaning to say this animal that we are referring to as the kolut, which Rabbi Shimon says is a non-kosher animal, even though Rabbi Yoshua says it's considered a kosher animal, but if that animal impregnates a kosher animal and has another offspring, that offspring will be not kosher, and that again Rabbi Yoshua learns from seh kesavim v'seh izim, and we're applying the rule of Rava to learn that same halacha in that case. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rava asks the following question, Hare Olai Ola, let's say a person says, I'm taking upon myself to bring a carbon Ola. V'hifra shor, and he separates a shor, he separates an ox that he wants to use as the carbon Ola. Uva acher v'ganav, and then somebody comes along and steals the shor. Mi pater ganav nafshe bekeves l'rabonan, is the ganav able to pater himself, meaning can he pay back? He doesn't have to give a shor, he'll just give back a sheep, and he'll say, you just took upon yourself to bring a carbon Ola, so bring this sheep as a carbon Ola instead of the shor. Or ba'ola sa'of l'Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he can even pay back with a bird, because according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when someone says Hare Olai Ola, he's able to bring a bird carbon. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Hare Olai Ola, if somebody says it's upon me to bring a carbon Ola, Yavi Kevis, according to the Rabbanan, he can bring a sheep. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says Yavi Toro ben Yona, he's able to bring a turtle dove or a pigeon. So again, what's the halacha? Mi amrin on shem Ola kavel elave, do we say that the person said he was going to bring an Ola, and therefore this is considered paying back the individual? You're giving him an animal that he can bring in as an Ola. O Dilmar, maybe Matziyamar Le, the person can say, meaning the Nigzal can say, Anam mitzvah min hamufchar be'ino lemevad, I wanted to do the best kind of mitzvah, so you need to give me a shor, because you stole a shor from me, that's what I wanted to bring as the carbon Ola. And the Gemara says, Basar di boy, after he asked the question, Hadar Pasha, then he answered as follows, Ganav pater atzma v'keves l'rabonan b'ola sa'of l'Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Ganav is able to exempt himself by giving back a sheep according to the Rabbanan, or a bird Ola according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And the Gemara continues, Ravacha breid Ravika masni labehedya, Ravacha the son of Ravika, he taught this explicitly. Amar Rava says, Hare Olai Ola, if a person says it's upon me to bring a carbon Ola, v'hifrish shor, and he separated an ox, uva'acher gnavan, and somebody came along and stole it, patar atzma v'keves l'rabbanan uv'yola sa'of l'Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Ganav is able to exempt himself by giving back a sheep according to the Rabbanan, and a bird Ola according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Mecharu chutz me'echad mimeya shabo. Let's say he sells the animal, but except for 1/100th of the animal, which he keeps for himself. O shaisalo bo shutfasur, if he had a partnership before he stole it, he was a partner in that animal. Hashochet v'nisnavla biyado, if he shechts the animal, he slaughters the animal, but it becomes an avela, the shechita is not a kosher shechita. Hanocher v'hamaker, if somebody rips at the animal, he tears at the animal. Again, the idea is he doesn't do a proper shechita. Mishalim tashlum ekefel, in all of these cases, he pays the double payment for the geneva, ve'eno meshalem tashlumi arba v'chamisha, but he does not pay the 4 or 5 times the amount. It's not considered to be a proper sale or a proper shchita in terms of the tashlume dalid v'hei. And Rashi explains, meaning before he stole it, he had a partnership. So lo karinan be'u mecharo kulo b'isur. That's not called selling it all b'isur. You're not selling it all with a violation because the person himself was a partner in the animal. Hanocher koro min chirav ad libo. Again, that means you tear the animal. V'hama'aker oker simonim, he uproots the simonim of the animal. Pater is going to be pater. V'afilu l'rabbanan. Even according to the Rabbanan who say shchita she'ein ru'iyah is called a shchita, the holav shchita he klal. But this is not a shchita at all. And the Gemara says, "My chutz meyechad mimeya shabo." What does it mean except for 1/100th of the animal? Meaning, what part of the animal can be left out of the sale that it's not considered to be a full sale? Amar Rav says, "Chutz midavar hanitor imo b'shchita." It has to be except for something that would have been permitted through shchita. As Rashi says, "My chutz meyechad mimeya kolomer mimai koamrinon di shayrei have a shiur." What does the Mishnah mean that if you left something out in terms of the sale that's considered significant enough that it's not a full sale? And again, Rav says, "Hanitor imo kagon mi besaro," meaning if you leave off something when you sell the animal, you leave off something from the meat. The meat needs the shchita in order to be mutter. Avol shioris ora v'karnea v'gizoseh. But Rav would say, for example, if he leaves out the hide of the animal, or the horns of the animal, or the shearings of the animal, lo have a shear. That's not a significant thing to leave out, and that still would be considered a valid sale. The Levi Omer, and Levi says, chutz migizoseh. Even if the person sells the animal except for the shearings, that is significant enough, even though it seems to be very insignificant, that is significant enough that it's not a total sale. And that's what Rashi says, V'levi Amar afilo gizoseha havishir. Levi says even the shearings is considered to be leaving off, and it's not considered to be a full sale. V'chein tanya b'masnisa, and similarly it was taught in the Brisa, chutz migizoseh. Again, even if the shearings are left out, that is significant enough. And the Gemara says, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Brisa. Mechara chutz miyada, chutz miragla, chutz mikarna, chutz migizoseh. If the person sells it and he leaves off its hand or its foot or its horns, or its shearings. Eino meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamish, he doesn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Rebbe says, davar hama'akev b'shchita, if it's something that holds it back from being a kosher shchita, what that means is if it's a critical organ that he's leaving out, eino meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha, so then he doesn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. V'she'eino ma'akev b'shchita, but if it's not something that's ma'akev b'shchita, it's not a critical organ, meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha, then it's not considered to be leaving out something significant, and he does pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Rashi explains again within Rebbe, hama'akev b'shchita, davar she'im nitol heimenu, what it means is if it's an organ of the body that if it was taken from the animal, nasis bo nevela mechayim, then the animal would already be considered a nevela at this point in time. It's lost a critical limb, kagon veshet, o kono, ha'yorech v'cholol shelo, o kaved, o echon mibnei mayayim. Rashi lists off several of the important organs, the lo mater, lo shchita. In those situations, having a shchita is not going to help anymore. The animal is already considered to be an nevela. Avol yodav v'ragla, the point is that according to Rebbe, let's say its hand or its foot, minho arkuva lamata, the lower part, that would not be significant, and that wouldn't be considered leaving something off. A time of tekulam mefarish lekamon. The reason behind all of these various tanoims will be explained later on. So again, Rebbe says that if you leave off a critical organ, that is considered to be something significant that is left off. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, chutz mikarna eino meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha. If he sells it except for the horn, so that is in such a situation he's not going to pay 4 or 5 times the amount. That is significant. Chutz mi gizoseh, but if he sells it except for the shearings, so that's insignificant. Meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha, and he's still going to pay the 4 or 5 times the amount. And the Gemara now says, B'shalom Levi. I understand according to Levi. Levi says even the most insignificant thing is considered to be something significant that is left out, and it's not considered to be a sale. Ketana Kamma, that's exactly what the Tana Kamma says. The Tana Kamma lists off chutz mikarna, chutz migizoseh, in all of these cases, he doesn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. So Levi follows the Tana Kamma. Ela l'Rav, but according to Rav, again, Rav said that it has to be something, you have to leave out something that is nitor imo b'shchita, as long as you leave out any of the meat of the animal, so that's something that requires shchita in order to matir it, that's considered significant, but everything else is insignificant. So Ela l'Rav, come on, who is Rav following? And the Gemara says, Amri, they say, Rav de Omar ki haytana de Tanya. Rav will have to follow a different Tana altogether in the following brisa. This is a different version of Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omar, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, Mechara chutz miyada v'chutz miragla. If he sells it except for its hand or its foot, Eino meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha. That is significant. He doesn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. But chutz mikarna, chutz migizoseh, but except for its horns, except for its shearings, meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha, he does pay 4 or 5 times the amount. So you see within this version of Rav Shimon ben Elazar, exactly like Rav, that if he leaves out anything that is nitor imo b'shchita, that is considered to be significant. And the Gemara now says, b'mai komiflagi. So all of these Tanoim, what are they arguing about? Tana Kamma says, utvacho kulo b'inan. When you shech the animal, you have to shech the entire animal. Umecharo kulo b'inan. Therefore, the same thing is true by selling the animal. We compare the two, and by the sale also, it has to be the entire animal. If anything is left out, that's considered significant, a significant part of the animal that's left out, and it is not a sale in terms of dalid v'hei. The Rebbe says, Rebbe says it's something that has to do with the tvicha, meaning if it's something that's ma'akev in the tvicha, something that's ma'akev in the shchita, that this is a critical organ, that already is going to be considered, if that's left off, that's significant. Again, that comes to exclude something that is not significant in the tvicha. And again, we're going to compare the sale to the tvicha, and so therefore, just like by the tvicha, it's something that's critical to the tvicha, so too by the sale. That again is the opinion of Rebbe. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Savar. Now Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, he holds, because he says that chutz mikarna, the keren, the horn, is considered significant, and you don't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. So he holds as follows, karna dolola migza kaima. The horn is something that's generally not cut off, so have a shiur. So that's considered something significant left out. Ve'ena meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamish, he doesn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. But gizoseh, but shearings, dilamegas kaimi, it's meant to be cut off, so lo have a shear, that's not a significant thing to leave out of the sale. Umeshalem tashlum arba v'chamish, and so therefore he does pay 4 or 5 times the amount. V'idach Tana devei Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and the other Tana of the yeshiva of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Savar, he holds Yadav v'raglav the tzrichi tvicha, the hands and the feet of the animal which require slaughtering in order to be permitted to eat them, have a shear, that's a significant thing left out. V'lo meshalem tashlumei arba v'chamish, and he wouldn't pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Karneo v'gizoseh, the horns and the shearings, the lo tzrichi tvicha, they don't require a proper shchita in order to be mutter. Lo have a shear, that's not a significant thing left off, and so therefore, again, in that situation, the person would pay the Daled Vehei, the 4 or 5 times the amount. And the Gemara notes, Kasha de Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, don't we have a contradiction here within Rav Shimon ben Elazar? 2 different opinions were brought, 2 different versions, and the Gemara says, Trei Tanoi v'aliv de Rav Shimon ben Elazar, there's a machlokas Tanoim, what exactly Rav Shimon ben Elazar said. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hagoniv hakitas, if somebody steals an animal that's missing a limb, v'yas hachigeres, or a lame animal, v'yas asuma, or a blind animal, v'chein hagoniv behemes hashutfin, and also, if somebody steals an animal that belongs to partners, chayiv, he's chayiv in the dalid v'hei, v'shutfim shegonvu peturim, but if partners steal, they are patur from the dalid v'hei. Rashi says, that's a kitas, the animal that's missing a limb, afagav deleka kula, even though you don't have the whole animal, chayiv, he is chayiv in that case. If he sells the animal, he's chayiv dalid v'hei, demai degonav hazavin kula, because that which he stole, he did sell the entire thing. And the Gemara says, V'atanya, but didn't we learn in a brisa not like this brisa? The brisa says, Shutvin shegonvu chayavin, on the contrary, if partners steal, they are chayiv in dalid v'hei. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan b'shutaf shegonav mechaveru. In one case, we're talking about a partner that steals from his friend. In that case, there is no dalid v'hei, as Rashi says, Shutaf shegonav mechaveru pater me'arba v'chamisha. There he's pater from dalid v'hei, afilu mechelek chaveru, even from the portion that his friend owns, to leko tvachu kula bisur, because he's not shechting it all, be'isr and prohibition, because he owns part of the animal. So there is no dalid v'hei. Kan b'shutaf shegonav me'alm. In the other case, we're talking about a partner that steals from other people. You're stealing from people that you're not a partner with. Now you really do have shechting it all, be'isura. And the Gemara says, Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asks Rav Nachman the following question: Yachol shutaf shaganav mechaveru v'shutvin shaganvu yehu chayav. And I might think that if a partner steals from his friend, or if partners steal, that they are chayiv. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Utvacho kulo ba'inin, you have to shech the whole thing. Again, the same idea. You shech the entire thing be'isur v'lekan. You don't have that. And so here it seems to be that if you have the partners that steal, it's giving you 2 cases. A shutaf that steals from his friend, that's one of the cases. That's the case Rav Nachman said is pater. And then also giving you another case called shutfin shaganvu. That sounds like a different case, which is also going to be pater from dalid v'hei. Rav Nachman would have seemed to say in that case, that's shutfin shaganvu from others, that they're chayiv in dalid v'hei. And so Elam Rav Nachman, rather Rav Nachman says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan b'shutaf shetavach ledas chaver. The difference is as follows. In one case, we're talking about a partner who slaughters, but his other partners that stole with him, it's to their knowledge, to their understanding, with their permission, so it's as if they're all slaughtering it. So there is dalid v'hei. But kan b'shutaf shetavach shelo ledas chaver. But let's say partners steal something together, but then one of the partners slaughters it without the consent of the other partner or the other partners, so then already it's not all being slaughtered together by them, so to speak, and there's no dalid v'hei. And Rashi explains, Shutaf shetavach l'das chaver, if the partner slaughters and it's with the consent of his friend, of his other partner, mishalmin ben shneim, then they do pay the 4 or 5 times the amount, the iko tvachu kula b'chiyuva, because you do have that they slaughtered entirely b'chiyuv. Ta'atovei chayiv al chalko, the one who's slaughtering is chayiv in his portion, v'chaveru nami also shliach, and it's as if his friend made him a shliach for his portion. V'haravinon la'el, the yesh shliach l'dvar aveira hachan, we say earlier that there is a shliach l'dvar aveira in this particular case, the amrinan tachas l'rabos is a shliach, that we said before, tachas includes the shliach. Shutaf shetavach shelo ledas chaver. Now, if the partner slaughters not with the consent of the other partner, so then pater is pater deleko tvachu kula b'chiyuva. You don't have that it was all slaughtered b'chiyav. Tvahu palga dechavri lo nasa shlich. He wasn't a shliach on the half that was owned by his friend. V'havale ketoveach umocher es haganav de pater. It would be similar to umocher achar haganav, rather the pater would be similar to slaughtering and selling after a ganav, which is pater. V'al chelko nami pater, and his portion is also pater. Because the whole thing has to be in chiyuv. So since it doesn't work on the partner side, it doesn't work on his portion as well. And Rashi continues, V'yafagav da'amran la'el. Now, even though we said earlier, chamisha bakar v'afilu chamisha chatzai bakar, that there could be a concept of 5 times the amount, even if it's 5 halves, hani mili hecha shegonav behemes hashutf, and that's talking about when someone steals an animal that belongs to partners, utvachu, and then slaughters the animal v'achar kach hoda le'achad mehem, and then he admits to one of them, al chelko, on his portion, to v'shas tvicha v'kula v'chiyuv, because there, at least at the time of the slaughtering, the entire thing was b'chiyuv. V'achi amrin b'hagozel, the shutaf shetavach shelo lidas chaveru pater. And that's what we say in Hagoza later on as well, that if a partner slaughters not with the consent of the other partner, so then he is pater. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah asks, Mechara chutz mishloshim yom, if he sells it except for 30 days, as Rashi says, chutz mishloshim yom esa b'malachti, I'll do my work for 30 days with it, or chutz mi malachta, except for its work. Rashi says, chutz mi malachta, im tirtza l'shochta shechot miyad, if you want to shecht it immediately. V'im tasa ba melacha ha-melacha hishali, but if you're going to do work with it, the work is going to be mine. Mi have a shiur olo, is that considered leaving off something significant from the sale or not? And similarly, chutz me ubra mahu, if it's a pregnant animal and he sells it except for the fetus, what's the halach? Is that considered leaving something significant off of the sale or not? And the Gemara says, I'll leave it the man to Amar Uber Yerech Imo, who according to the one who says that an Uber is considered like a limb of its mother, Lo Tibaylach, it's not even a question. To Hashayr, but he certainly left off something significant, and there's no dalet v'hei. Ki Tibaylach, I'll leave it the man to Amar Duber Lav Yerech Imo. The whole question is according to the one who says that the Uber, the fetus, is not considered like a limb of its mother. What would be the halacha? Meimar Amrinon Kevin the Mechuber Bahavashi, or do we say that since it's attached to the mother, it's considered leaving off something significant? O Dilmor, maybe Kevin the Lemifresh Minakai, since it is going to separate from its mother. Lo Havashir, it's not considered leaving off something significant. Ika Diamrin, there are those that say Kevin the Lav Yerech Imo, who Lo Havashir. The analysis is as follows: since it's not a limb of its mother, so therefore it's not considered leaving off something significant. O Dilmor, maybe Kevin the Tzarech L'Ishtaruye Bahada B'Shchita, since in order to eat the fetus, it has to be permitted through the shchita of the mother. That's the halacha, that the uber becomes permitted to eat through that shchita of its mother. Keman d'shayr b'gufa dami, so maybe it is like leaving off something significant within the body of the animal. And the Gemara says to all of these questions, teku, the Gemara leaves it as a question. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Boy, Rav Papa asks the following question: Gonva kata mechara mahu. If he steals the animal, he cuts off a limb and then he sells it, what's the halacha? Mi amrina, do we say my dagon of holozav, and that which he stole he didn't sell? O dilmer, maybe madazav and holoshire, that which he sold, there was nothing left off of that sale. And the Gemara says teku, the Gemara leaves that as a question as well. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Gonav if he steals, v'nasan la'acher, and then he gives it to someone else, v'tavach, and he slaughters it. Gonav v'nasan la'acher macher, he steals, he gives it to someone else, and he sells it. Rashi explains, Gonav v'nasan la'acher v'tavach lo nasan b'matana. We're not talking about where he gives it as a gift. Because if he gave it as a gift to another person, so then even if it wasn't slaughtered at all, he's going to be chayiv for giving it over, misham mechira, because that's like selling, kedikatani sefer, like it says in the end. Ela aso shliach. What's happening over here is he's giving it over to someone else, and he's appointing that person as a shliach, l'tvicha o l'mechira, to either slaughter it or to sell it. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Tes Amud Aleph.